For as much pressure as on head coach Marcus Freeman to lead the Irish to a win on Saturday, it seems like all Notre Dame fans want to know is how is Gerad Parker's offense going to do against a very vulnerable USC defense?
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? Welcome to Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. Today is Friday, October 13th, so happy Friday to you. Although I gotta admit, that doesn't hit the same when it's Friday the 13th. Anyway, my name is Tyler Wojciak. I am the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and producer covering college football for Fox Sports. And this episode of Locked On Irish is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire could feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Lots of great stuff on the show this week to get you ready for the big game tomorrow between Notre Dame and arch rival USC. Greg Flamung from Irish Sports Daily was on Wednesday's episode to do a full preview of that game, and I had Matt Fortuna from the Inside Zone and the Independent Podcast on yesterday's show to talk more about the USC game, and then we also did like a big picture state of the program discussion about where things are at 7 games into the season. So if you haven't listened to those yet, I'd encourage you to do so once you're finished up here. As for today, we got another mailbag episode, and thanks as always to everyone who sent their questions in. You make my life easy. And let's get to our first question. It's actually 2 questions in one, basically, because they're both asking the same thing. At BSCherry38, do you think Parker is replaced after the season? And then at C_Lot42, is Gerad Parker coaching for his job on Saturday? The offense has been really bad the last 3 games. I think anyone who's been watching Notre Dame could point that out. But I don't think that we're in a Brian Van Gorder situation where Gerad Parker could get fired during the bye week. I don't think it has reached that level. Now, if Notre Dame goes out there and gets shut out, people are certainly going to be clamoring for that. There's going to be a lot of Notre Dame fans on the message boards who are going to want to see Gerad Parker fired if Notre Dame is not able to put up any points on a USC defense that is outside the top 100 in practically every statistical category. I don't think that's going to happen. So there is certainly a lot of pressure on Gerad Parker coming into this game, and Notre Dame's offense is going to have to perform. They have only scored 55 points total over the course of the past 3 games, and that has led them to a 1-2 record. It could very easily have been 0-3 if not for Sam Hartman and his late-game heroics against Duke. But the offense is just simply not cutting it. I have issues with the scheme. I have issues with the play calling in certain moments, and as much as I hate to criticize it, some of these play calls and these decisions seem so blatantly obvious, and for whatever reason, Notre Dame has not been able to execute, especially in 3rd and short situations. Like you look at that Louisville game, Notre Dame was running into a 10-man box. Like that had no chance of success. I don't care how good Louisville's defensive line or front 7. It doesn't matter. If you put 10 guys in there, they're going to stop them. And I think Louisville's defensive line did some good things against Notre Dame, like putting Ashton Gelati, their best pass rusher, who's typically a defensive end. They put him inside and then had him go up against Notre Dame's interior offensive lineman, and he won that battle far more often than not. I expect more teams to do that in the future. Is Gerad Parker going to be able to adjust to that? We'll have to see. So even if Gerad Parker is not going to get fired after the game Saturday, even if the offense does really poorly, I do think that the game will go a long way in determining if Gerad Parker is going to be around next season or not. It's still way too early to tell definitively yes or no. Right now, I would certainly assume yes, because it's not like it has been all bad this season. Now, granted, the best offensive performances came against the weakest part of Notre Dame's schedule, specifically those first 4 games. But if Notre Dame is able to get the offense going against USC, they pull out a win, and then if they finish the season 9-3, 10-2, or anything like that, then Notre Dame is certainly not going to fire Gerad Parker. It has not reached that level quite yet. But what Gerad Parker actually is working against him is that going into this season, the expectations for the Notre Dame offense were very high. I think after the whole offensive coordinator search debacle, whatever you want to call it, there was sort of a understanding from the fan base that, like, okay, that process sucked. Gerad Parker wasn't our first choice. He clearly wasn't Freeman's either. But you still thought that the offense would be able to produce at a very high level this season, given the fact that they had a quarterback in Sam Hartman who's extremely talented and also very experienced. You have that. You have one of the best running back rooms in college football. And we all thought that the offensive line would be a lot better than it has been in recent games. So the fact that they're struggling as much as they are is pretty shocking, because it should not be this bad. Now, it's not all on Parker. The offensive line has certainly not played up to their expectations. He's dealing with a lot of issues, he's dealing with a lot of injuries at receiver, although I guess you could say issues as well, because the healthy guys who are out there getting the bulk of the snaps, Tobias Merriweather, have not really been producing as much as we would hope that they would. But still, a lot of that does fall on the offensive coordinator, and when you're going up against a defense like USC's on Saturday, who is currently 79th in the country in points per game, but they are 112th in yards per game allowed, 86th in yards per play, Notre Dame is at a point where they have to produce at a high level in this game. And I understand that there's going to be some weather issues. It's going to be wet. It's going to be windy. It's not going to be ideal for high-powered offensive football, but USC is going to be dealing with the same issues. And even despite all those weather concerns, I don't think anyone is expecting their offense to have a no-show because they've got Caleb Williams and they are loaded with talent. So getting back to Parker here, this game is very, very important for his future at Notre Dame. I'm not saying it's if Notre Dame wins, he's going to get to stay, or if they lose, he's gone. But if they don't perform and the wheels start to come off a little bit for Notre Dame in this season, they end up finishing 8-4 and 7-5, Marcus Freeman is going to have a decision to make because the offense should not be that bad, and the season should not go in that direction given what Notre Dame has on their roster. And that'll be really interesting if Marcus Freeman is forced to make a decision about Gerad Parker's future at Notre Dame. That's going to be tough for Freeman, but that's part of the job. I mean, Gerad Parker is Marcus Freeman's guy. He sort of stuck his neck out for him and got him over to Notre Dame when he was in need of a tight ends coach to replace John McNulty. I don't know if it was Tommy Rees's first choice, but Freeman was like, hey, I want him on the staff. He got him, and then he promoted him to offensive coordinator after he missed out on a few other options. But sort of the name of the game. Hell, Brian Kelly had to fire Mike Denbrock, who was literally in Brian Kelly's wedding. Clearly, they have gotten over that because now Mike Denbrock is the offensive coordinator at LSU, and even though LSU has been struggling this year, they certainly have not been struggling in offense. So they were able to mend that relationship and create a professional relationship that has been very productive for LSU over the course of the past 2 seasons. But that's part of the job. Freeman wanted to hire a lot of guys around him who he was comfortable with, who he had worked with previously. He's got that now, and if the results are what they are and Notre Dame ends up having a really disappointing season, Freeman is going to have to make some tough decisions about people that he's close to. So we will see on Saturday, but I'm telling you, this USC defense is gettable. I already listed off a few stats. They're also 130th in the country in explosive plays against. Then again, Louisville was 122nd, and Notre Dame didn't have a ton of success against them either. But teams have been able to run the ball on USC a lot. I am begging Gerad Parker to find ways to get Notre Dame's running back, specifically Jeremiah Love, Jadarian Price. Get those guys out in space to make plays because USC is terrible at tackling. And Notre Dame's wide receivers, they're banged up. I don't think they have a real great threat right now with the ball in their hands after the catch, other than Chris Tyree, who's also a converted running back. So I would love to see him find ways to get those guys out in space, kind of like they did against against Ohio State when they had a lot of success doing that. Because if they try to run it up the middle against USC and USC just starts stacking the box and blitzing the interior and beating Notre Dame's guards, it could be a long day for the Notre Dame offense. But I'm holding out hope. I'm holding out hope that Gerad Parker can get this offense going in the right direction. If they're able to get a big win going into the bye week, maybe that'll turn things around for the rest of the season, and they'll get some momentum, and then we will not be having these discussions about Parker at the end of the season. We will have to see. All right, next question from @TomLear1. How responsible is Sam Hartman for the offensive struggles? He had a great start, but he's been mediocre ever since. I have seen some Notre Dame fans turning on Sam Hartman lately, and I really just cannot comprehend why. And I admit, he had a really bad game against Louisville. He made some tough decisions, and I think at the end of the game, he just was chucking it out there. He wasn't really locked in and as engaged as we would expect him to be. But this idea that Sam Hartman is now a bad quarterback all of a sudden just makes no sense to me because he played well enough to win against Ohio State. Notre Dame's offense was moving the ball throughout the entire game, but then when they'd get to Ohio State's side of the field and they had scoring opportunities, they'd shoot themselves in the foot. Hartman is responsible for that 4th and 1 that he did not convert when he scrambled right, but why was Notre Dame running that play to begin with? Why do they insist on not giving the ball to Wojciak in short yardage situations? That's not on Sam Hartman. And I thought for as bad as the Duke game was for the offense as a whole, the offense was getting beat, particularly up the middle against Duke's defense, and he didn't have Jaden Thomas or Jaden Greathouse, and the Notre Dame wide receivers who were out there were simply not getting open. It was the same story again against Louisville, where anyone watching that game could say, wow, Notre Dame's offensive line is playing terribly. They're also running out all these new combinations in a hostile environment, and Louisville's defense is taking advantage of that. Plus, there's not a single wide receiver for Notre Dame outside of Jordan Faison who's getting any separation against this defense. So Sam Hartman has no time, and he has no open receivers to throw to. But now all of a sudden, Sam Hartman is at fault for all of that? It doesn't make any sense to me. If you want to say that he's not a top 5 quarterback in college football, which is what some of us thought he was a few weeks ago, that's fine. I'd concede that. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback right now, but he's definitely top 10. I don't think you can name 10 college quarterbacks right now that you would rather have over Sam Hartman. And if you do think you have 10, I won't argue with the top 5, but take that 6 through 10, put them in Notre Dame's offense the past 3 games, and would they have as much success as they have on whatever other team they're playing for? I don't think so. We'll see on Saturday. It could be a really prime opportunity for Sam Hartman to have like that one shining moment in a Notre Dame uniform, because he was very close to having that against Ohio State. It didn't happen, but he could have it again this Saturday going up against the reigning Heisman Trophy winner on the other side of the ball. So we'll see. I'm still a believer in Sam Hartman. I think he has a really good game on Saturday. All right, we've made it this far without talking that much about Caleb Williams, but that's coming up right after this. This episode of Locked On Irish is sponsored by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. I used LinkedIn Jobs a couple years ago, and they made it easy to contact the hiring manager, learn more about a role, and eventually I got the job. LinkedIn also makes it incredibly easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs. All you have to do is add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. We all know hiring people can be time-consuming, but adding the right team member can be invaluable to your business, and LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier than ever. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Real quick before we get back to the questions, this is your reminder to please like the video below and subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube. You can also ring the bell so that way you'll get a notification every time a new episode comes out. Also, if you're listening to the podcast, please rate the show 5 stars, leave a review, and of course, subscribe. And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube right now and you notice the lighting completely changed, you're not crazy. I just had to open my garage door because it is incredibly hot right now in LA, and specifically in my garage with no AC. Anyway, let's get back to the questions here. This one comes from @Rye_Brown45. What is the best case scenario for Notre Dame's defense against Caleb Williams? They will score, but can he be contained? I think if Notre Dame can somehow keep USC under 30 points, they'll have a good chance at winning this game. If you watch that Arizona game, you notice particularly early on, Caleb Williams was really struggling because Arizona was able to get pressure with 4 guys, and they sacked Caleb Williams 4 times. And just getting him on the ground ever is an accomplishment. They weren't able to do it at the end of the game. He started running around on that defense, scored the game-winning 2-point conversion, but he's very elusive, and it's really hard to bring him down. We saw that last year when Notre Dame's defense would get a ton of pressure. I think they got pressure on over 40% of their dropbacks against USC, but then Caleb would just run around. He'd make a play, run for a first down. They just could not get him on the ground, but that is absolutely crucial on Saturday if they want to have a chance of winning. The good news is for Notre Dame, USC's offensive line this year is not nearly as good as they were last season. They had to add 3 transfers over the offseason, and they just have not gelled as much as they did last season. They're still loaded at wide receiver. They're still loaded at running back, so they're still very productive. But if Notre Dame is going to be able to contain Caleb Williams, they simply have got to get pressure with 4, play a solid zone with their 7 guys in the secondary, and just make plays and try to prevent any big plays from happening, because there's going to be some times watching USC when you're playing against Caleb Williams where he's just going to make a play that's going to make you want to pull your hair out. It kind of reminds me of watching Steph Curry play basketball, because I'm a big Cleveland Cavs fan. So for 4 straight years, I had to watch and root against Steph Curry in the NBA Finals, and it is maddening because the Cavs could play great defense on Steph. They would force a really ridiculous shot with like 2 seconds left on the shot clock, and Steph Curry would just make it, and it would be demoralizing. Or if the Cavs ever had a run, and you're like, oh, they're up by 10, that are going to pull away, then Steph would just hit 3 threes, and all of a sudden it's back to being a 1-point game. It feels like that watching Caleb Williams because, one, they're never out of it. Hell, Arizona had a 17-point lead that evaporated in a matter of seconds because Caleb Williams got hot and they started moving the ball down the field and scoring. So that went away quick. No lead is ever safe against them. Not only that, when you do play great defense on him, sometimes he's going to just make a play because he's the best player on the field. It's the fact of the matter. Now, USC is still gettable because of the issues on the offensive line and the issues on defense, but Notre Dame is not going to be able to completely shut down Caleb Williams. That's not within the realm of possibility. Maybe if the weather is just so impossibly bad that the ball is slick and neither team can move the ball on offense, even then, though, I still think given his arm strength, he'd be able to make some plays through the air. So I think if they're able to keep him and the USC offense under 30 points in this game, that's probably the best case scenario for this Notre Dame defense. Okay, next one comes from at ND Irish 455. Any update on who will be out for USC and Notre Dame? I'm assuming this has to do with injuries, and USC does not disclose any injury information. Lincoln Riley keeps things like sealed, and nothing is ever getting out. He's really coy, and we kind of saw a little bit of that earlier this year with media access. I think they suspended one of the reporters for 2 weeks, and it became a big deal for the blue check marks of the world. But that's just how Lincoln Riley operates. He does not really give away that much information. But in talking to my roommate George, he's a USC alum, big USC fan. He's been scraping the message boards for days. I've got him on payroll this week as my researcher, and according to him, it looks like Zachariah Branch, their stud true freshman, is going to be out, but who knows with Lincoln Riley. He had this quote on Thursday. Quote, Zachariah Branch is going to need to make some jumps to be ready for us. He's not able to do everything yet, end quote. Take that, for what it's worth. Branch did not play against Colorado, and he did not play against Arizona. And the weird thing about that Colorado game is that there were no rumors or anything that Branch wasn't going to be able to play. He just showed up on the field on Saturday in street clothes in his jersey, and then he just wasn't playing. It doesn't look like he's limping, so it doesn't seem like it's a lower body injury. And at this point, if it was a concussion, you think he'd probably be able to get back out there? I don't know. It didn't happen during a game as far as I know. So right now, I would say I wouldn't expect to see Zachariah Branch play in this game, but it also wouldn't shock me if Lincoln Riley just says, he's saying these things to the media and then he plays him on Saturday. I don't know. The real issues for USC injury-wise are on their defense. They were down to their 4th and 5th cornerbacks against Arizona. They've even been cross-training one of their wide receivers at cornerback. Let me get his name right here. Mekhi Lemon. Yeah, he's one of their wide receivers. He's been taking reps at defensive back this week. They also added, they changed their right tackle. He's coming in this week. It seems like their starting right tackle was dealing with some injuries, so they brought in their backup. He finished the game against Arizona, and he's projected to start on Saturday. Looks like Damani is back from injury, so that's good for them. But they are dealing with some injuries. Even Mason Cobb, he apparently said that his rib popped out, but he's going to play. I don't know. So they are not at full health. Neither is Notre Dame. It seems like Jane Thomas and Jane Greathouse, not surprisingly, are still dealing with a hamstring injury. That's going to be nagging probably throughout this week, and maybe they'll be fresh after the bye week. But I don't really know what to expect from them. Thomas was limping a lot at the end of the Louisville game. Greathouse barely saw any action. So maybe we'll see a lot more of Jordan Faison in this game, which at this point, that wouldn't upset me. He was the only guy making plays for Notre Dame against Louisville. So I'm all for it, man. Let's get the walk-ons out there, and if he's the one making plays, let's do it. All right, we've got a few more questions left. Coming up next, we're going to talk about my favorite moment from the Notre Dame-USC rivalry and who I want to see Notre Dame face in a bowl game. College football season is here, and this season, the Locked On Podcast Network is kicking up our coverage with a new show called College Football Kickoff Live, which airs every Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on every Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover everything going on in the sport and go in-depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of college hosts covering their team every day. If you're listening to this and it's after 1 p.m. Eastern, you can go back and check out the show because I was on it on the Friday episode to talk about Notre Dame USC, so go check that out. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. All right, we got a few more questions before we wrap this up. This first one from Ty Jackson. What's your favorite moment from the rivalry? Mine is Will Fuller's touchdown on Adoree Jackson in 2015. That's a good one, especially when you see the video of Adoree and Will dapping each other up before the play as a sign of respect, and then Will Fuller just cooking him on a post. Doesn't even really do a move, just like outruns him for a touchdown on Notre Dame's first play from scrimmage offensively because USC went right down the field to open that game. They scored a touchdown. Notre Dame answered right back. That is an underrated, really good game in the rivalry, I think. Notre Dame ended up pulling away late in the game, but that game was in jeopardy in the fourth quarter. Really fun time at that game as a student. I had some friends visiting as well. That was great. But really, my favorite moment, I've said this many times before on the podcast, so I won't rehash it again, but 2017, my senior year, perfect day in South Bend. Notre Dame absolutely housed USC 49-14. USC was ranked. I think USC might have even been favored in that game. Sam Darnold was the quarterback, and Notre Dame just demolished them. That was an absolutely perfect night, perfect day to be a Notre Dame fan. Can't forget beating USC in 2012 to stamp that spot in the national championship game. We don't have to talk about what happened in that national championship game, but just the fact that Notre Dame finished their first undefeated regular season in a really long time and going back to the national championship, that was just a perfect end to an unbelievable regular season that year. So that was great. My worst one, or one of my worst ones that actually resulted in a win, I wanted to share this story. In 2018, as Notre Dame was looking to cap off another undefeated regular season, I was supposed to fly back to where I was living in Connecticut that morning, and it was Thanksgiving weekend, so there's a bunch of travel issues. My flight ended up getting delayed over and over again. So I watched that first half at a Chili's in the Detroit airport, and as you remember from that game, Notre Dame did not look good in the first half. As a matter of fact, they looked awful. So I was like, are they really going to lose to USC and not be able to make the playoff because of this? Then on the plane, I was trying to watch the game on the screen, and like the service cut out, so I was like in and out of the game. I couldn't really keep up with what was happening. And then I saw the Tony Jones touchdown, which was great, and then the screen went black, and there was like nothing I could do. So even though it looked like Notre Dame was going to win the game, I did not know for certain. So when we landed and I pulled up my phone, I was like, well, we're about to find out if Notre Dame is going to the playoff or not. They won. I let out a huge sigh of relief, and that was just a really interesting moment from the rivalry that I'm never going to forget, but that was not nearly as positive. Okay, at M_Kowalik, what's your projected line in the Notre Dame versus LSU or Notre Dame versus Alabama game? Assume each are at full strength. I'll also assume that it's a neutral site. I think we're getting a good glimpse of what that line would be for Notre Dame LSU with Notre Dame USC, because I think Vegas is higher on USC despite the struggles, and Notre Dame is favored against them. Now, granted, that game is at home. So against LSU, I would say Notre Dame is probably favored by like a point to a point and a half because of just how bad LSU's defense is. I think it'd be it'd be looked at similar to this Notre Dame USC game. So I think Notre Dame would be favored in that one. I do not think they'd be favored against Alabama. I would think Alabama would be favored probably by 3.5 because Alabama's defense is so good. And considering how Notre Dame's offense has looked against good defenses this season, that total would probably be pretty low. But considering Alabama's offense hasn't been that great either, I don't think they're going to be a huge favorite. So, yeah, I would take Alabama -3. That'd probably be my spread for that. And then for LSU, Notre Dame would be favored slightly. All right, last question here from at DWhalen13. Since the CFP is out of the question, who would your dream opponent be in a bowl game, and would you expect Sam Hartman to play? I feel like it has to be LSU, right? That would be the most exciting for the Notre Dame fan base, and I think most people would be engaged. Like the storylines there would be, they'd write themselves essentially with Brian Kelly going up against his former team, against a guy that he hired to be his defensive coordinator who was then promoted to be head coach. I think both fan bases would be very excited about that game because at this point, like with the way the bowl system is, it's never going to be what it was. So you just kind of hope that you have an interesting opponent so that you can get up for the game, and then you just hope that your best players play. I do think Sam Hartman would play in a bowl game because it's not like he's going to be a first-round draft pick anyway. He's probably going to be a late-round pick if he's going to be even drafted at all. And he even said part of the reason why he came back to college was just because he really wanted to play football. He loves football, wanted to continue playing it, and he understood that if he went to the NFL, if he didn't make the team, his football career might be over. Or at the very best, probably early on, he'd be a backup for a while, not really seeing the field that much. So I would expect him to play. Another team I'd throw out there, this is more personal, and I might even regret saying this, I would like to see Notre Dame play Kentucky because I have a lot of friends who went to Kentucky and are big Kentucky fans, and they think that Kentucky would beat Notre Dame this year. And for as bad as it's been this season for Notre Dame, I really think that they would beat Kentucky. But the reason why I might be asking for it there is because if you had asked me going into the season, who are the 3 teams that you do not want to see Notre Dame lose to, it would be Ohio State because I lived there for 10 years and I have a bunch of family still there. A lot of them are Ohio State fans. Lost to them. Second, I would say Louisville because I'm from there too. Have a bunch of friends from Louisville who are also Louisville fans. Lost to them, and I've been hearing it from them. I've been hearing it from the Ohio State fans. And then third would be USC because I live in LA. I am surrounded by Trojans. Hell, I live with one. I work with about 50 at Fox Sports. So if Notre Dame loses to USC, I will literally not be able to show my face in public. And if they were to lose to Kentucky at the end of the year in a bowl game, I mean, that's it from me. You will never see or hear from me again. But maybe if they were able to beat Kentucky, I'd get a little bit more juice. Finally, something would sort of go my way at the end of the year. So maybe we'll see what happens with Notre Dame. Hopefully they win out here, finish up 10-2, get a good bowl game, maybe even New Year's 6 against a good team. And that would be a lot of fun to talk about. But that is going to do it for this episode. That's another week of Locked On Irish in the books. Thanks again for making this your first listen of the day. Before you get a head start on your weekend, please remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the pod. Like the video, rate and review the podcast. You know the deal. Do that whole thing. Enjoy the game tomorrow. I hope I'm wrong about the outcome of this one because I predicted USC would win by 10 a couple days ago on the podcast with Greg Flamung. Sorry to end it on a somber note, but no matter what, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope you enjoy the game. I will be back here next week to react to everything that goes down in the game tomorrow, so I'll see you then. Go Irish.